spend less than you make. You don't need the new car. Yeah, and then buy a duplex before you have a family. Those are the things that I'd at least tell myself, because those three things would have probably made a difference earlier in my life.
You're listening to the Millionaires Unveiled podcast, where you'll hear the stories and interviews of everyday millionaires. We'll unveil their decisions, their strategies, and their current portfolio allocation. Now to your hosts, Clark Sheffield and Jace Mattinson.
Welcome back to another episode of the Millionaires Unveiled podcast. This is episode number 212. Clark, how's it going? What's going on in your world?
Dude, nothing much. What's going on with you? Thanksgiving's coming up. Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, man. We're going to see some supply shortages with turkey. I've read a few articles, man. You better get your turkey early this year.
Oh, really? I actually haven't read that. What are they saying?
I think there's going to be a little bit of a shortage with some of the normal fixings for Thanksgiving, whether it's turkey or stuffing or whatever. There's going to be some empty shelves. So get your rolls, get your turkey, whatever you want for Thanksgiving. You might want to get it early this year before it runs out.
But that doesn't affect you because you do brisket, right?
That's right, man. You know it. I ordered my brisket several weeks ago. So I'll be picking up my brisket here, I think on the 19th or the 20th.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah, hopefully they didn't run out. Didn't tell me, but they took my money already, so I think I'm good. I ordered it from Franklin here in Austin, so it's a good tradition. We still do a little bit of turkey usually, but that's my wife's prerogative. I always got to have my brisket for Thanksgiving. So we've got a question from Richard. Went on our website and through SpeakPipe asked a question, so we'll play that now.
Hello, this is Richard. Wanted to get your thoughts on self-directed IRAs and if the millionaires use that as an investment vehicle for their overall growth. Thank you.
So, Clark, self-directed IRAs, how many millionaires do you think we've talked to that have used that vehicle?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and thanks, Richard, for calling in about it. I mean, this and HSAs are the two things that have surprised me and that we haven't seen as much as I thought. I mean, that's just my take. Correct me if I'm wrong. We're starting to hear more in our interviews, HSAs. I think it's becoming more and more popular, but we don't interview a lot of millionaires that have over $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 in their HSA. And then self-directed Roths or self-directed retirement accounts is another one that we don't hear about too often. I can only remember a handful of people to do this. So, I don't know if that's we don't get to it or what, but I think it's not as commonly used. And I don't know why. I mean, it's an interesting take. Obviously, you hear about Mitt Romney and others who have big self-directed retirement accounts. Peter Thiel, I think, is the other big one that's been in the news. And now Congress is trying to do away with that or change the rules. But yeah, not too many, Jace, right? Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, no, it is definitely something you and I have discussed that we've been surprised at, but I also don't have a self-directed either. So I'm one to talk there. On the HSA, it's completely opposite. I've been building up my HSA for quite a while, but the self-directed is interesting. I think because one, it does offer some tax benefits to be able to invest in some of these alternative investments. So I guess the question would be for some of these real estate professionals, why they don't, if they're going to acquire a bunch of rentals and they plan on kind of trading up for a while, maybe why don't they put those in a self-directed? Now, I do know, obviously it gets a little tricky with the accounting, the income and expenses have got to kind of flow in and out of those accounts. And you basically are signing up for not touching those for 10, 20, 30 years, however long until you've got access in terms of not taking the penalties to access those early or withdraw that money early. I think the same is for maybe small business investments too. But, just from my personal take, that's the biggest reason why I haven't used self-directed. I kind of look at my retirement accounts as those that I'll probably utilize with public securities mainly. However, I do plan, as long as the rules are in place down the road here, to do some self-directed with my Roth. But the other thing too, I think, is sometimes it takes a little while for those to get built up to then make investments that are worthwhile. I mean, you're not going to go self-direct a $10,000 investment, right? I don't know. What's your take, Clark?
And the
what about
fees
you?
It's a few $1,000s, a couple percent or something every year. And I think you pay an asset management fee to the intermediary that does it. Everything has to flow through somebody. So I agree. It doesn't make sense until you kind of have a critical mass in a retirement account. But I think we've talked previously. I'm familiar with one company that I know a couple of people have had good experiences with. So if you're looking for somebody that could manage a self-directed Roth or who to go out to, who to ship that out to, then let us know, right? And we're happy to provide a recommendation. But I mean, I agree. It's something we don't hear too much about.
Are you going to self-direct any in the future, Clark?
I don't know. I'm kind of the same as you. I think retirement accounts is mostly in the market, but hard to say, right? If you have a really good opportunity, maybe that's something you think about.
Yeah, I think it's about the time horizon too, right? Like traditionally you put these in public securities and it's like, well, I'm not touching that forever. You put something into a private investment and say do want to sell that piece of real estate or you do want to do this and you get a big windfall and it's like, well, you're not touching that for years either. Whereas if you got that windfall that's not in a retirement account that you're not going to touch until you're 59 and a half, you can utilize that cash and do something else with it. But at any rate, thanks for writing in or recording this on our website. Once again, if you've got a question for a millionaire, we'd love to have you go to our website, millionairesunveiled.com, and record a question, just like Richard did. This week we have Nick, the Human Resource Officer in the Army National Guard. He has a net worth of just over $1 million, about 65% in real estate between primary residence and a handful of rentals, and some spread amongst various retirement accounts and a little bit of cash. Also, Nick, thanks for your service, and also thanks. We just passed Veterans Day. Thank you all those service members out there. Appreciate your service as well. We are going to highlight a few here over the next coming weeks who are in the military, and Nick is one of our first here, but we've done several interviews with several great military members and discussing their journeys and kind of the intricacies that they encounter. And so I'm going to be excited to have several of those on the show. Last week we had David. He's in his 60s, net worth of over $2 million. He has extensive holdings in silver and other precious metals, and he's had quite the interesting career path that's landed him in the financial industry. So reach to that, go check out. That's episode 211. And without any further delay, let's get into the episode today with Nick.
Nick, what's going on? Thanks for joining.
Hey, thanks, both Jason and Clark, for having me. I'm glad to be here. So
yeah, it'll be fun. So just give us, we'll obviously jump into your story and your allocation in detail, but just give us a quick overview on who we're talking to here.
Yeah, again, I'm Nick. Yeah, I'm from the great state of Washington in the Pacific Northwest. I'm currently a human resources officer in the Army National Guard, and I think we're just over $1 million on net worth that my wife and I have accumulated both through real estate and savings.
Awesome. Good for you. Congrats. And how is it broken up?
Currently, about 65% of what we have is real estate. Again, it's all single family homes. 16% in non-retirement accounts, 15% in retirement accounts, and then the rest is what we just keep in kind of our cash reserves for both us and the rentals as well.
Okay, and the 65% in real estate, I assume that includes your primary mortgage.
So the 65% in real estate, it includes our personal home, yeah, and then again that's the net worth is subtracting out all of our debts.
Okay, and then the remainder in the real estate, everything outside of your primary home or primary residence, what is it? Is it single-family investments, multifamily, syndication investments? What is it?
So all our single-family investments, all of them are, at least the first 3 were homes that we had personally lived in and then moved out of and converted into rentals. And then the most recent 2 are just straight investment properties that we bought with no intention of living in.
Okay, interesting. So 6 total homes here, right? 5 rentals, and then your primary mortgage. So I want to jump into that, but maybe let's just first attack these retirement and non-retirement accounts. So between the 2, it's about 30% of your net worth. How are those invested? Mutual funds, index funds, single stocks, bonds?
Yeah, so because I'm both in the Army National Guard and a federal employee, I have TSP, so the Thrift Savings Plan, and I invest 100% into what's called the C Fund, which I believe mirrors the S&P 500 or something similar to that. When it comes to other retirement accounts, for both my wife and I, we have Roth IRAs that are 100% stocks, and we're a strong in the VTSAX, kind of believer realm. So we keep everything in VTSAX.
So have you always maxed those out since you started working? Is that relatively new?
So interesting. As I've kind of my income has grown over the years, I slowly increased to the point where I was maxing out my 401k, the TSP. And though I've recently adjusted that thought process, but as far as the IRAs, every year as much as we possibly could. Granted, it hasn't been very long with the IRAs, but that's kind of a new piece for us.
And do you have IRAs for both you and your wife?
Yes, for both of us.
Okay. And then the non-retirement investment accounts, that's pretty much the same makeup you said, right? Like VTSAX?
Yeah, it is 100% VTSAX, and it's just in just my taxable brokerage account.
So is the thinking there to keep that, I mean, I guess you call it non-retirement accounts, is the goal there to withdraw it and buy additional real estate, or what's the thinking there?
Really, and our thought most recently was because the last couple of years we've had an extremely high savings rate. The idea was that we would start paying off the rentals, but instead of chipping away at them with the cash flow from each of the other rentals, like snowballing them onto the mortgages, starting with the smallest debt first, we decided to stockpile everything into the brokerage account, allow the market to kind of do its thing. And then once we've achieved enough to essentially sink an entire mortgage, we would do that. And so we originally had planned to pay off our smallest mortgage this December. However, last September, an opportunity jumped in our lap, and we could not say no. So we purchased and closed on another rental in October. And so we used about half of the funds that we were originally going to use in order to pay off, maybe a little less than half, but we were going to pay off a mortgage, and we secured another rental property, a cash flowing property. And so that kind of delayed our paying off mortgages by about 9 months. But we've acquired another asset that's producing income for us.
So these 5 rentals, 6 homes, 5 rentals, when you're primary, are any of them paid off? I guess of the 6, are any of them paid off? Or do you have mortgages on each of them?
No, we had one that we purchased back in 2018, maybe 19. I can't remember now. Might have been 18, that we bought cash. The idea was that we bought it cash with the intent to, do a cash out refi once we had fixed the property up. So we bought that one cash, and then about 18 months later, we refied the money out, got everything that we wanted back, and so we got 100% of our money out. And then now that we have a cash flowing property that we're pretty much in for nothing, we just had our money tied up for 18 months.
So are the mortgages on 15 or 30 years?
They're all 30 years, but again, we do have a plan to. I think currently, we conservatively, we think we can pay them off in maybe 5 or 6 years.
Wow. And then live off or have that cash flow, I guess, to live off of, right, in the future?
To do whatever we want. Yeah, we've talked about whether if that would be the turning point to then just live off the money, maybe retire early, but that would potentially limit my ability to access my federal employee pension, though, again, that pension is probably a very small slice of the pie in the overall pie that may or may not get there. You never know what happens.
So if you just think about the real estate or the 5 rentals, if those were all paid off, how much in cash flow would that be monthly?
Monthly, it would be closer to 65, maybe more, maybe 70,000 a year.
No, that's great. Yeah, 70 grand a year.
Taxes and insurance. Yeah.
Yeah. Good for you guys. So, okay, I want to come back to the real estate because I think that's really a bulk, right? At 65% and 5 rental properties, 3 of which you were residences that you lived in, right? And then converted. So I want to come back to that because I think that's a big piece. And I don't think we've had somebody, Jace, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we've had somebody on the show that's lived in 3 different properties and then kept them all as rentals. I think somebody's lived in one, kept it as a rental, and then bought another rental. But doing it 3 times is, I think, unique. Something we haven't heard on the show.
Yeah, we started off a little. So my wife and I were, it must have been 2010 when 9 or 10 when I bought my first house. So I lived in a little 2-bedroom house. I was just graduated from college. My wife had bought a house while she was in college. Granted, she bought her house in the middle of the, when they were loaning money to anybody. So she had a house that she bought with a 20% down, but the 20% down was it was funded, or it was loaned on as a home equity line of credit, not a line of credit, but a home equity loan. So she had her down payment was a home equity loan and a mortgage. So her house was 100% financed, and she was 19 years old when she bought the house, I think.
And what was the loan against? She had some sort of other collateral?
No, it was all the house. This was in 2007 or 8 when, again, I think the lending practices were a little looser.
Right, they were giving it to your dog to.
Yeah, which is, I think, what got everybody in trouble in the end. So after we got married, we decided to move into her house, and we started renting mine out. And that's kind of where it started, right? We just like, okay, I wasn't going to make any money off of selling this house because I bought it with a VA home loan, 0 down. So I had no equity in this home after a year or two. So we decided to just rent it out and at least pay the mortgage, which shortly we found out that the rent more than covered the mortgage payment. We were able to cash flow, a couple $100 on it, which was nice. And then after we got married, I accepted a job in Tacoma. And so we moved, and her brother was kind of renting for a little while. We didn't know how long it was going to be, the work. It wasn't, but then the work sent me to South Carolina for 6 months. And then when we came back, I got a permanent position where in the office that I'm in now. And that's when we decided to rent her house. Her brother moved out. We rented it to a regular tenant, and then we bought our third home together, where in Spanaway, where we live now, and lived there for a few years. Raised our children. I think we'll raise the one we had, and then had another, and then we bought it about 3 or 4 years later. So I bought that house in 2013, right, which was probably the best time to buy a home. It was probably the bottom of the market to buy a home. So in 2017, as it's coming back up, we bought number 4 and moved into it, and then rented out that home that we lived in. And then that was in 17. And then in 18, we bought number 5. We bought number 6 with just a conventional 25% down.
You guys are like buying a house every year almost.
Well, and we really weren't planning on it. Like I said, we were planning. We had a plan. We've got our little goal up on the, effectively, did the math, right? The math said that we can probably pay off a mortgage about every year at our current savings rate by snowballing the cash flow, right? So not keeping any of it.
Pay it off every year. Oh, that's where you go back to in the 5 or 6 years, you'll have it all paid off. Yeah, so we pay off one, and essentially that principal payment now becomes more cash flow. And so we kind of did the math, right? So as we pay off the mortgages, alternatively, I could just sink into the stock market and probably make the same or more of a return. But our calculated return on investment there was, okay, if I pay off this mortgage, the return, the cash flow that I'm going to get back is about 7.5%, almost 8% return, which is pretty good. So, as far as I'm concerned, and then continually snowball that into each of the houses. And so, granted, we would be sinking, several, what would probably be close to $600 and something thousand into mortgages over the course of 5 years by snowballing all that. Our return, initial return is about 8% or so.
Nick, is it just a math equation for you then when you were looking at deciding whether or not to pay down these other mortgages or to invest in another rental property? You said that the opportunity kind of popped up out of nowhere. Was it all math, rate of return that you were looking at?
So for me, it's definitely math. That is a heavy, there is some risk that goes into it, and being able to, I think, kind of assume some of that risk, buying another property, like in this case where an opportunity just dropped in our laps one day. Somebody sent me an MLS or a picture of a home, and the numbers, when I run the numbers were amazing, and I knew I had to move fast because somebody else was going to come in there. Luckily, they listed that house on a Tuesday to list, and I was the first one in and got it. But other than that, yeah, the plan was to just sink money away and pay them off because, in 5 or so years, we could have the cash flow to essentially live off of, though we probably wouldn't, at least not yet, but we could, right? We could live off the cash flow of our rental properties, knowing, because we know how much they make, we know how much they cost, we know, but buying another one we don't know what's in the new house. We do our due diligence, but things come up. There are little quirks with every house, and you don't know what's going to come up, and you don't know what's going to change. And so there's some risk there. But when this opportunity came up, I just couldn't say no. So mathematically, yeah, I mean, everything penciled out for me.
What rate of return are you looking for on that?
So because I think we like to buy and hold. So I do look at a rate of return. It's just one of the things that I look at, but it's not the whole picture. Granted, if I get a huge rate of return, then it's probably going to happen. But again, some like my VA home loans, where I put nothing down, so the rate of return is pretty high. If I'm going to get into a home, I think this last one, we got into it, we were out of pocket, I think $51,000. And so my cash on cash return, so my rate of return was 14% after closing costs and rehab and everything. So I get a 14% return on this new rental property, which is why I couldn't say no. And the cash flow is also really nice. It's able to pull down about $600 a month. And whereas even if I went to this December pay off a house, I would have had to have sunk away, almost twice as much. I think about $87,000 or so I would have had to have essentially wiped out of my investment account in order to pay off a mortgage. And that would have only brought me, what's that, a 5 or 600, not even a 600, I think it was a 5. I can go back and look, but it's only $500 return. So I think I essentially pulled more money, or pulled half as much money out and made more in cash. My return was double to buy a new property than it was to pay off an existing mortgage, which that's kind of the beauty of leverage, right? I can use less money to create more cash flow, which kind of stops me from ever selling my houses. We always think about, oh, what if we sold one or did a 1031 exchange? And I don't know. We haven't ventured there yet, but on selling any of our properties, just because we know and like the homes, we like the people that we rent to, and we just like managing rentals, I guess.
Why not continue to just buy homes instead of pay off the mortgages early?
I don't know. A deal like the one that I just got, I'm not actively hunting homes and searching, but if someone throws me a line, if someone throws me a property, I'm going to do the math. I'm going to look at the deal and see if it's even possible. And if it is, sure, why not? Where's the harm in throwing in an offer? But until then, we'll, like I said, we're going to continue down this path of starting to pay them off. And then if we do happen to see something we want to buy and it makes sense, why not? It's going to just generate more cash flow, and I think we'll still get to the place we want to go. It just might slow us down a little bit. Because in the end, I think we're looking at $5,000+ a month in cash flow in a few short years. That's nice to have to, we want to go somewhere. Let's go. Who cares? It's 1 month's rent or something, right? It's just a good feeling to know that we could get to a place where we'll have that kind of cash flow.
Okay, let's take a quick break from the episode and thank JustWorks for sponsoring today's show. Are you a small business leader or owner and looking for a new way to onboard and manage remote employees? Are you doing all of the HR tasks at your company? Well, JustWorks makes it easier for you to start, run, and grow a business. Let me tell you how JustWorks can help. JustWorks can relieve you of some of the administrative tasks you don't love. The stuff like running payroll, managing benefits, and figuring out state-by-state rules and regulations. JustWorks is the ultimate HR platform for small and growing businesses with simple software and expert support for benefits, payroll, HR, and compliance. They make it easier to hire and manage remote employees across all 50 states. Whether your team is in person or remote, you can give them access to national large group health insurance plans and manage onboarding, payroll, PTO, and compliance all in one place. Sure, you can do it all, but why do it alone? Find out how JustWorks can help your business by going to justworks.com. Again, that's justworks.com for more information. And thanks again to JustWorks for sponsoring today's episode.
Will those 5 paid off give you sufficient cash flow for your needs, for your wants, and that's basically what the goal is? You said you're really not searching out additional deals right now. How far are these geographically apart from each other?
Oh, so they're all in the state of Washington. All 6 homes are in Washington. One of them is about 2 miles away from where I live. So we moved literally just on the other side of the hill. So one's 2 miles away, but the other 4 are in eastern Washington. One is in my hometown of Waitsburg, just north of Walla Walla. And the other 3 are in the Tri-Cities. So Richland, and one in Richland, one in Kennewick, and one in West Richland. Those are, in the Richland and West Richland are our original homes. And then the 2 we live in over in Spanaway, lived in Spanaway. And then the one in Kennewick and in Waitsburg are purely investment properties. But so they're far away, but we have family in all the areas, right? So we've got a pretty strong network of people to kind of help manage help do some little things if something comes up, or help us coordinate with contractors if we need work done. But for the most part, we fix the properties up pretty nice to make them relatively low maintenance.
Yeah, and you manage those all 100%?
Thought process. Oh yeah, we manage them all. We actually manage all of ours. So our 5 plus another 3.
Oh wow!
So
and you're taking a fee on managing these others.
Yes, yeah, very very minimal. We charge. So my wife does most of it, and I think it's just $100 per door for each of them.
Those are for family members or friends?
Yeah, family and friends mostly, because we already have the network, we have the software, we have the systems in place to do everything, and so we just charge $100 to. My wife does she which I think is probably less than 5% for most of the homes I think that she's renting. Maybe closer to 7 on one of the smaller ones.
What's Jay? Sorry to interrupt you. What software do you use?
We use Rentec Direct, and we use that one because it has everything. It from soup to nuts. It has everything that from the beginning of putting in a listing, a rental, getting applicants, screening applicants, all the accounting piece of it, and then at the end of the year, as we're getting closer to the end of the year, right? So now we'll push all of our 1099s through Rentec, and then of course within that comes there's a property inspection piece of that it uses a third party software called Z Inspector, but it's all run through Rentec. So if we do a move in or move out or an annual inspection, that report then gets published inside of Rentec into a file that we can either share with the tenant or homeowner.
So does that system do the accounting as well?
It does most of it. So we'll reconcile it and kind of tweak some things if we need to categorize something. But yeah, so it has all the categories built into it. It spits out a little Schedule E to help, at the end of the year say, hey, what expenses go to what that would generally line up with the Schedule E.
So then just going back to Jace's question, I think that the question was, you mentioned earlier 60 or 70,000, right? After these are all paid off, hopefully in 5 or 6 years in annual cash flow, is the 70,000 going to cover your annual living expenses?
Oh yeah. And then some. So with the exception of my children's expenses, and because we value education, and so we send our children to private school, and my wife recently got a job at the kids' school, and so her income, 100% of it covers essentially their tuition at the private school, which is nice, right? So now she's essentially volunteering at the school in exchange for tuition is kind of the way we feel about it. So with the exception of private school tuition, and assuming that she continues to work there through their graduation, we live off of a very small amount of my regular income. And, I think we could probably live off of $50,000 or less a year. And so to have a $70,000 a year, and then granted, that's a pre-tax income, right? So a pre-tax cash flow is doable. The exceptions, right? Obviously, we don't know what our health insurance costs. We have not. It's not something I've calculated. Health insurance is something that I think kind of needs to get thrown into the equation eventually to see if $70,000 is enough for us to live off of and pay for those expenses that are generally, at least largely, covered by my employer.
Sure. So let's jump into, I'm just curious, let's jump into questions or excuse me, numbers for a sec on one of these rentals. I know Chase asked a little bit about numbers, but what do you run us through maybe one deal? What do you pay for it? How much do you put on it in terms of a mortgage and what is the payment? And then how much does it cash flow if you have that available?
Yeah, I do. Let me pop open. So the most recent one that we bought.
Is this the one that you said you could not say no to?
I could not.
All right. Good. I'm excited.
So I want to say the asking price. I wonder where it went. But the asking price was somewhere around 188, I think. We kind of went back and forth on the purchase price. There was a seller paid closing costs for up to a certain amount, but because it was an investment property. And this is probably just unique to my lender, but because it was an investment property, we were limited to, I think, 3.5% or 2% or some weird percentage of the purchase price was the most that we could accept. So I think I came in at 180 because there were plumbing and electrical issues in the home. And they said no, they wanted to go, or maybe they said yes, but, or they think they came up and then they were not going to pay any of the closing costs. So I came up for $4,000 or $5,000. I think I came up $5,000 or came up $4,000 and then asked for the $3,600 in closing costs. So to them, it looks like I gave them a $400 concession, but really that was $4,000 that I didn't have to pay out of pocket because I was going to borrow that money anyway. So it was less money I had to come out of pocket. So I came out of pocket, I think 185. Or not, I didn't come out of pocket 185. So
that was your, yeah. I mean, it's an interesting take, right? What you just said is right. I mean, it's different than saying I buy the house for 180 and cover the closing costs.
Yeah, right. Because
then you get a smaller loan and you have to pay for the closing costs.
The difference between 180 and 184 was about $30 a month in cash flow.
Right.
So, but I would have had to come out of pocket $4,000. So instead, I kept my $4,000 and came out $30 a month in cash flow. Like, so what?
Mm-hmm. So you get it for 185, and then how big was the loan?
184. Yeah, it was 184 or something to that effect. So I paid $45,000 down was the down payment, and we mortgaged 135. I guess we can do the math real quick. So it was 180. I'm missing something. Maybe I went down 175 and came up, or 176 and came up. But anyway,
so were you right at 20% down, or a little bit more than that?
I was at 25%.
Okay, 25% down.
So 25%. Again, my closing costs were very, very small, about $800. We originally had a rehab budget of $10,000. Again, this house didn't need any work other than plumbing and electrical stuff. So we had it was still a $10,000 worth of estimated work. We only spent $5,500 in closing costs. So we're out of pocket $51,300, right? So $51,000. The rent, we listed it for $1,250. And had a pet fee thrown in there. So we got it rented 4 days after I listed it for $1,300 a month.
Wow.
So the principal, interest, taxes, and insurance comes out to $700.08. Now, what I don't do, and I haven't done for a while, is I don't set aside an additional monthly amount for vacancy and repairs and any kind of capital expenses because I built into this a cash reserve that I keep on the properties. And so with this, I keep 3 months for each of the properties, right? So cross that over 5 properties. It's several $1,000s that we hold for a reserve. Granted, I have never in 10 years, almost 11 years, had a vacancy that I didn't induce, right? So if I intentionally kept a home vacant for a month in order to completely rehab it or upgrade it or do all new plumbing or something, right? So I've only done that twice. But I've had 0 vacancies in 10 years. So that's not a big concern of mine. Usually it's we need to replace a water heater or a furnace goes out or something that's going to cost several $1,000s, $300 or $400. We have the reserve available for that, and then we'll build that back up over time. And I do that by just not keeping the cash flow. And even then, I don't personally keep the cash flow. We save all of it, after business expenses and those kinds of things, right? So anything that's left over gets saved and essentially helps us be in a position to buy in. So again, 51 total invested, so 25% down in closing costs, $700. So it's $1,300 in, $700 out. So it's like $599. So it's $600 monthly cash flow, $7,200 a year. So that's a 14% return on my investment.
Yeah, cash on cash, right? The 7,200 divided by the 51,000. So 600 you're cash flowing a month. And then what about like insurance and property taxes and any of your other fixed costs?
Taxes and insurance is all included in the $700 payment.
Oh, so they escrowed for it.
Yeah, I escrowed.
Okay. Okay, nice.
Yeah.
Good for you. So yeah, and then you got 7,200 plus your principal pay down, right? Which is going to be a few $100s a month.
I have $560 in here, but that's principal and interest.
So in a way, I mean, I look at this and it's like, okay, on a 15-year almost, because you have such a big cushion, you could almost cover the payment. So in a sense, is that what you look for? Like cash flow equal to your mortgage payment? It seems about what this is here.
Well, that's just this one. I wasn't looking for that, but when I run the numbers, and when I ran them, I was running it with either $1,000 or $1,100 rent. So I was a little more conservative on the rent. I was a little more conservative on the mortgage. Like my mortgage payment, I estimated a little bit higher. Insurance was a little bit higher. Taxes was hard on this one because the county had a $45, I think, a year taxes because the person living there was elderly and had some tax waivers or whatever. So it was really hard to figure that one out. So I just took some other properties nearby to figure out what the taxes were going to be. But even then, I think I was still looking at a 12 or 13% return on investment. So then we made the offer, and then we went and looked at the house. We made the offer based on some very terrible pictures because we knew that if anybody else did what I was doing, they also were going to come in. And not only were they going to come in with either the same offer or like an all cash offer, because we've done that where even before this, we put an offer on a duplex, and someone came in $25,000 more with a 50% down payment, and they're going to waive all sorts of things. I'm like, I can't compete with that because that's just the kind of market that it is.
All right. What was your interest rate on this? I'm just curious what they're giving you on investment properties.
I want to say this was 3%.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
So Nick,
I wasn't expecting it.
Yeah, just big picture here, because I know we're running short on a little time and there's a couple other things I really want to get to. But big picture, I mean, is this doable for the average person? Do you feel like it was hard to find these deals? What about the people that say, hey, I don't want to be a landlord, right? I don't want to manage. I mean, what's your overall take here with 5 of these rentals? Obviously, it's done well for you.
So yeah, even, which is funny, right? So my own family who and I think I had one bad tenant. And we kind of lesson learned, right? We've learned it, but that one bad tenant even scared a family member of ours. Like they don't want to even do that because they might get put in a bad situation where they'll either have to evict or put lots of money into a house. And I have to explain to them like, hey, we kind of set ourselves up for that particular situation, and that's not always the case. But I think people really stick to. Or that those bad situations tend to be the most prominent, even though they're probably not very common. And because I've had, one in 10 years, and we kind of walked into it. Like we should have seen it going into it, that was just a, mom and 2 daughters move in, one daughter moves out, another friend moves in, a boyfriend moves in, the mom moves out, right? So these very weird dynamic scenario. We're like, yeah, we probably won't do that again.
Right.
So, but yeah, so people I think are kind of scared to rent a house and it's hard, right? So I have had the privilege of serving in our military and had been able to buy a home 0 down. Like I've had to have no down payment whatsoever. That kind of makes it nice. I also bought some of my homes in probably the best opportunity times. 2013 was a really good time to buy a home. But that's just, I didn't know what I was doing, right? I didn't know I was buying in a down market. I just bought because I needed a home, and that was it, right? Need a home, go buy one. Whether it's 0 down or 3.5 or whatever, you need for an FHA, I think it's doable. But it's only doable if you aren't spending your entire paycheck. If you, live below your means, like don't spend everything you make. Don't buy the Mercedes.
Right.
I can't tell you how many times I show up at work and I have people in my office that have cars that are worth, their loans are bigger than some of my mortgages. It's outrageous.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the plan going forward? Is it to keep acquiring? Do you ever think, hey, I should scale up and buy small multis and like duplexes or quadplexes? Or are you happy with the numbers and the results you're getting from the single family?
We're happy with the results. My wife and I do discuss the possibility of growing, but at the same time, we're happy where we're at. The 5-year plan is to pay them off. Now, if something comes up, sure, I'm going to run the numbers, and if it works, it works. I'm going to go for it. But we're not actively seeking more properties. We're always venturing and talking to people, and if something just comes up, then it comes up, and that's what happens. That's the beauty of the opportunity. But again, the current plan is to pay them off in 5 years, and we're kind of on track to, at least back on track to pay off the smallest mortgage by, I think, September now.
Awesome, man. You've done a phenomenal job for yourself and your family, and congrats on your success.
Thank you.
I want to do some millionaire questions we always get into with all of our millionaires. What's the most expensive pair of pants you've ever purchased?
I don't know. Maybe, I don't even know if I paid the full price. So I have a pair of Lucky jeans. Actually, I have a few. Probably no more than $70. And that might be pushing it. And that was probably 10 years. And that was probably 10 years ago, because I haven't bought a pair of jeans in 10 years.
What's the most expensive pair of shoes?
I don't know. I run a lot, and so because I wear through my shoes a lot, I probably don't spend more than $90 on a pair of running shoes. But I go through. Granted, I will probably go through 2 pair a year, depending on my mileage.
Do you have a special brand or a favorite brand you buy?
No, I used to. Right now, I'm running Hoka's, but not completely in love with them. But it's just where I'm at right now. But normally, I run some flats. What are they called?
Dude, I'm the same, man. I don't know how I feel about those things.
Yeah, they're a bit thick for me.
Yeah.
But I'm also getting closer to 40. I've been in the Army for 19 years. My knees aren't just with it. I've been jumping out of airplanes for the last 3 years. It's takes its toll after a while. And so it's kind of nice right now, but I generally like flats.
What about the most expensive car?
Probably the car I'm in now. But I think I paid $23,000 for it. I've always driven Hyundais. Like, I've driven a Hyundai for over 15 years.
Is there a dream car down the road that you want?
No. I'll probably just buy Hyundais and drive them until the wheels fall off each time. Though this car I have now was the first one that I bought. I intentionally bought it and bought it cash. No, we don't have any car loans, but so I bought it cash intentionally that way, so I didn't have to have a car loan. But in the past I always did, and I'm glad I don't.
Interesting. Do you remember what age you became a millionaire? I guess it'd be fairly.
I was 36. I was 36 technically.
36.
It was just a few months ago we crested the mark, and of course I think we were so close earlier in the year, and then I think we were about like 995, and then it just dropped from there. Like, well, this ain't gonna happen, not this year. But eventually everything came back, and then and this house jumped at us, right? So that increased our net worth, because I did buy it slightly below the appraised value.
Is that something that you track monthly or quarterly or annually?
Daily.
Daily.
Yeah. So I keep everything on Personal Capital. Granted, it's been screwy for me the last couple of weeks. All my mortgages dropped to zero for a while. So it looked like my net worth was at like 1.7, but the mortgages finally came back. So I was like, oh, dang, that looked nice for a while. But I knew the reality of it. But it was just hard because I didn't know where we were at first. But one thing I have noticed is, because really I never tracked it until probably this last year. And I don't know if it's like that statistics thing, right? Where when you start looking at something, it will change, right? It'll change. And so now that we monitor, or I look at it, it just changes my behavior to like, okay, well, if I get to a certain point, and really I'm looking at more of what I'm saving and not necessarily my net worth. That was kind of a nice thing, high five in the kitchen with the wife. Like, yep, we made it. And then that's it,
Interesting. Do you know what your household spending is annually?
Yeah, we average right now about 48 a year. And that's everything. That's including tithing, mortgage, all of it.
Okay. What about, as much as you're comfortable sharing, range of annual income for your working life?
Regular, again, I have my regular W-2. I have 2 different W-2s, but my regular job's about, I think it's 95. The National Guard, depending on how much work I'm doing, can be close to 20. And then I have, I participate in a very small business over in Eastern Washington that brings in about $3,600 a year. And then I have about $15,000 in extra. And then, of course, rent, which I think right now is about 31. But that's, I think this year, we had a number of expenses that came up. So I think we actually this year netted a little more than 15.
Okay.
So somewhere in the 140, 50 some-ish range.
And you started out at what?
How long ago? I mean, I started working at 15 at $5 an hour. I mean,
where did you start working for $5 an hour at?
At a bank, actually.
There you go. Okay.
I worked at a bank, moving boxes of checks.
Awesome.
Minimum wage.
So, Nick, just to wrap up, what would be your words of advice to somebody who's just starting out or wants to get started on a journey to financial freedom or rentals or something of that nature?
Oh, gosh. It's like if I could go back and tell myself something, it would, if I'm going to buy a home, buy a duplex and rent out the other side, or spend less than you make. You don't need the new car. And then buy a duplex before you have a family. Those are the things that I'd at least tell myself, because I think those 3 things would have probably made a difference earlier in my life. Even though now I'm in a position where I realize all these things, and I try to tell other people that now, especially those younger than me, who have the more time. They've got the time to get there.
Totally. Well, once again, appreciate it. It's Nick with a net worth of $1 million. And really, we didn't even get into your pensions and how those are valued. So definitely a multi-millionaire probably. Thanks for coming on the show today.
Yeah, thanks, Jason Clark. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Nick.
Thanks for listening to the Millionaires Unveiled podcast with Clark Sheffield and Chase Mattinson. For more stories, investment opportunities, and information, check out our website at millionairesunveiled.com. See you next time when you'll hear from another everyday millionaire.